and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about how to determine the difference between being on track and falling off track and needing to get back on track of something that is actually helpful for us, right? So learning how to be disciplined and how to be consistent and how to be on track with something that is actually benefiting our lives in a real way, and just sort of navigating the challenges of being consistent at doing anything that is going to be good for us, because that is a real thing in real life where we are going for something that is truly beneficial for us, and it just sometimes is hard and takes time and discipline and work to become the kind of person who can consistently stick with our path and then see the results of that path, versus forcing ourselves to try to be on some sort of track or to be on some sort of path that society is telling us we should be on, that our culture is telling us that we should be on, that our families are telling us that we should be on, that religion is telling us we should be on, that our work environment is telling us we should be on, that is actually not healthy for us. It's actually a part of our systems of adrenaline and stress and overconsumption and overproduction. And the reason we keep falling off track, the reason we keep not being able to do it, is because the path that we're on is counter to our humanity. It's counter to what's actually healthy for us. And the incapacity to stay on the track is not a flaw and a weakness and something we need to change, but it's actually like a sign from our humanity to be like, this is never going to be a thing that's healthy for me. This is never going to be something that I should actually be doing. And my falling off track is actually my wisdom telling me that I can't continue on with this. Okay? And understanding the difference between these two things of like, when is my system telling me that I just need to develop discipline and I just need to try harder? And when is my system telling me this hurts and this is really hard to maintain and sustain because it's actually hurting me and it's a part of the indoctrination of our culture or whatever it is that has indoctrinated us specifically, and it's not actually right for me. This can be really difficult to determine and discern because, again, our minds are really able to be kind of convinced of anything. And the world is really good at convincing us that, like, if you do this and if you do that and if you're on track with this and if you're on track with that, that you're gonna, have the most amazing life and you're gonna do the most amazing things. And I like to sort of, I would like today to start with the way that I sort of figured this out for myself was coming from a history of, being chronically ill my entire life and having a lot of my illnesses just like not be diagnosed and not be looked at. Like, I didn't get diagnoses of what was actually wrong with me until I was in my 30s. And so I lived for most of my life sick, and like my body didn't work the way it was supposed to work. And it was all sort of like blamed on me and looked at as though like I had a weakness or I was doing something wrong or there was something wrong with me. And so I spent a lot of time, of course, getting into the natural health, wellness, and spirituality world as a way of trying to heal myself. And I got a lot of really good things out of that. Like there are things that I got out of the sort of deep tissue cleansing and the healing world, the wellness world, that really did, I think, save my life and have kept me as functional as I am. However, being in that environment, being in the environment of the cleansing and the detoxing and the vegans and raw food and all of that stuff for many, many years, I've seen a lot of things. And I've seen a lot of really extreme practices come and be sort of like touted as the answer to everyone's problems. That like if you are experiencing any kind of symptom in your life, that everything can be healed naturally. So like that idea being just totally wrong, but like what people in the natural health and wellness world sort of want to say a lot of the time that everything can be healed naturally if you're just doing all the right things. And if what you're doing isn't working, if the juice fast that you're doing isn't working, if the extreme diet that you're doing isn't working, whatever, that it's not that it's wrong, it's that you're not doing it enough. Right? That tends to be sort of the mindset in the cleansing natural health world, is just like the more extreme the better, and the more you stick to those extremes the better. And I was watching as so many people were just doing juice fast after juice fast after juice fast after juice fast, and long water fast and cleansing, and making their diets more and more and more and more restricted over years, and then falling off track and binging on what I would consider normal healthy foods, like literally binging on like rice and pasta and fruits and vegetables and lentils and like cooked food and all of this stuff. And just watching as people struggled just to maintain the extreme thing they were doing, and thinking that, because when they're on a juice fast, or because when they're on a water fast, they feel high and they feel like their symptoms go away and they feel better for a little while, that it worked and that it was a good thing and that it was really helping them. And then when they went back and started eating rice, or started eating cooked food, or started eating like whole foods that are absolutely nutritious and completely good for you, feeling heavy or having their symptoms come back, and thinking, see, like that's the reason, like that was the bad thing, I fell off track, I have to get back on track with this extreme thing. And there was just like this crazy 8 cycle round and round and round and round and round. And what I observed over time is like, okay, it's not that being on a water fast or being on a juice fast is on track and is healing you and is the best thing in the world, and the reason you don't feel good is because you keep falling back to cooked foods. The reason is that you're being way over restrictive. And when you do these like extreme protocols, you feel good, because to a degree, like there are many reasons why those things might feel good, right? Like we can be possibly eliminating something that we're allergic to by eliminating literally everything, and essentially being on an elimination diet. So there are things maybe that in our current way of eating that don't feel good, but we're getting rid of everything and thinking that it's the purge of everything that's making us feel better, when really it's not that. Or we can be literally sending our body into like absolute stress, fear mode, survival, trauma, starvation mode, and we get that high of the body being like, whoa, oh my God, we're not okay, and trying to get you to go find food and mistaking that for healing. And then again, the heaviness or the symptoms coming back when we eat food again, being mistaken as like the problem, when really it's like, no, it's like you just nourished yourself, and then the high of being in that starvation mode wore off and your symptoms came back because they weren't actually healed and they weren't actually cleansed. The point being that because there was that high or the like sense of getting some sort of result while doing the extreme thing, it convinces us that the extreme thing is on track and that's what we should be doing all the time. And then it convinces us that the normal, healthy, balanced, maybe even long-term healing, long-term supportive, actually sustainable way of life for us feels heavy, and it feels not as good and not as light and not as high. And we think that must be wrong. That must be bad. That must be the cause of my problems. And I think that, right, so this is part of the reason I started the mystery school in the first place, because just watching so many people in the cleansing and the natural health world just do this like extreme on again, off again, on again, off again routine, and not being able to actually establish something that is reasonably nourishing and reasonably supportive, and then can be healing over the long term. So basically what I kind of realized is like healing and cleansing and detox and all this stuff, if we are going to heal whatever we have, if we are going to improve our symptoms, because again, we can't always heal everything. Some symptoms can be improved. But generally speaking, if we're going to feel better, it's going to happen because we make little changes to our lifestyle over time that are supportive, right? That are, there's this kind of saying in the cleansing world, V equals P minus O, from Arnold Ehrhart's detox protocol thing. And it means vitality equals V equals energy minus obstruction, pressure minus obstruction. So like the idea of like, if you get rid of all the toxins in your body, then energy can flow and the pressure can flow and everything will flow, and then you'll be vital. So that like the cause of all disease is essentially obstruction. And that is a massive oversimplification, obviously, of reality. But what I added to it was V equals P minus O plus I, plus integrity. Like if we don't have structural integrity to ourselves, if we are continually stripping and stripping and stripping and detoxing and cleansing and detoxing and cleansing, eventually you're just going to wear your body out. Eventually you're just going to cleanse yourself into nothing, right? Eventually you're going to destroy your tissue. There is a such thing as doing it too much. And we've seen this over and over and over again. And what we're seeing with the people who are falling off track is that they're not falling off track. Their bodies are trying to guide them back to something nourishing, back to something that has some weight to it, some support to it, because long term, you can't just fast and fast and fast and fast and fast and expect to be healthy. You're gonna destroy yourself at some point. So like that falling off track was actually a life-saving thing. So that's my point that I'm trying to get to, is that there are very real circumstances in our lives where what we are being told, and even what we might be thinking and feeling in our own experience, is being on track and doing the right thing and healing and fixing all of our problems, might actually be something that's degrading us, might actually be something that feels good because it's stressful and we're in that bliss, overwhelmed state, and mistaking that for healing and mistaking that for growth. Or there are like some benefits to it and it's all mixed in with the things where it's degrading us. And because we want to believe we're on the right track, we're over assuming the healing and we're ignoring the things that are falling apart. And then we're assuming that when we fall off track and we start eating like nourishing, grounding foods again, that we've done something wrong and we've done something bad, when really we've like saved our lives. And that was actually a good thing. And falling off track was the best thing we could have done for ourselves. And I think that a lot of us can kind of witness that and see that as like a clear example of what I'm talking about generally now in life, which is a lot of the time the things that we're pushing for and the things we're being told are on track, and the things that we're being told are going to make us happy and are going to satisfy us and are going to lead to us having a fulfilling life aren't. That they are actually harming us, and they are too much, and it's too much adrenaline, it's too much stimulation, it's too much abdication of our humanity. And we keep falling off track and falling into our coping mechanisms and into the ways that we numb, and we're self-sabotaging, and we're doing all this stuff, and we're thinking, what's wrong with me that I can't just keep going? What's wrong with me that I keep falling off track? And it's that you're not falling off track. It's your humanity keeps overriding the path that you're on, because the path that you're on is not supportive. It's not actually something you can do long term. So like I said, this is why I started the mystery school, because I was seeing so many people just burning themselves out physically, mentally, emotionally, and not being able to establish a long-term sustainable growth path that was actually going to help them get to a life that feels good for them, that is reasonable, that is reasonable within the world we actually exist in, and that is sustainable and maintainable over time, right? That is what we actually want. We want something that's sustainable and maintainable over time, and that's taking us towards something that actually is going to feel good for us, that doesn't require that we're white-knuckling our effort every single day, all the time, as much as possible to keep ourselves going, right? That being in that state of having to push so hard and to hold on so hard to what we're doing, to keep the wheels on the bus, takes all of our effort and all of our willpower. That is a good sign that what we're doing is either too much or we're on the wrong track, thinking it's the right track, and we need to adjust our expectation and we need to adjust what we're doing. So all of that is to say, how do we determine the difference between I keep falling off track because I just need to develop discipline and I just need to develop strength and this is the thing I need to do and it's really going to be good for me, but I, need to become the kind of person who can do it. And I keep falling off track because my humanity is being destroyed. Okay, so this is not necessarily black and white. We aren't always going to be able to determine right away which side of the fence we're on, which is why the first thing we're always going to do when we are looking at our lives and looking at the paths that we're on is always start with compassion for ourselves. This is why this is the foundation of everything. And in the mystery school, this is why in the mystery school, we talk about returning to compassion, returning to curiosity, being able to get on our own side as this fundamental tool that we witness over and over and over again. And the way that we go about talking about it in the school is all around shame and guilt, right? So every time we feel like I fell off track, I did it wrong, I failed, I suck, I'm not good enough, right? What I'm doing is not good enough, I am not good enough, my life is not good enough, I'm not on track. If I were to give myself permission to stay how I am for the rest of my life, that would not be okay because who I am is not okay. That shame and that guilt, that, in my opinion, is the thing that obfuscates our capacity to tune in to what is truly right and what is wrong for us, to figure out a life path that's actually going to work for us. Because it continues to funnel all of our emotions and all of our feelings into this idea that the reason we don't feel good, the reason we feel bad, the reason that anything in our life hurts, the reason that anything isn't working is because we suck and we're failing and we're the worst and what's wrong with me that I can't keep going and I can't keep doing it. And when we're starting from that place, there's no way of determining whether we're on the right track in real reality or if we're living with our conditioning. Okay? When we start with shame and guilt, it obfuscates the actual reality that we're living in and the results that we're getting, and it drives us down whatever track our minds have been convinced of over and over and over again, and it completely stops us from being able to see if we're really on a track that we need to be on, and if we are, what kind of support we need in order to be able to maintain that track, or if what we're actually experiencing, again, is that internal sense that is telling us, this is not the right thing for me. This is never going to be a thing I'm going to be capable of doing. This is not a path that I'm ever going to be successful at because it goes against my humanity. When we are stuck in shame and guilt, we cannot figure this out. So again, this is why in the mystery school, there's like literally an entire curriculum around learning how to process our shame and our guilt. Because in our culture and in our society, we kind of have to recognize that shame and guilt are the default settings. And I want to hear from you, like, if this is resonating with you, that literally any time we are unable to keep up with whatever it is that we are being told we should be, Because here's the thing about our culture, right? That we are constantly being fed these ideals of who and what and how we should be living. That there is no shortage of ideas and philosophies and teachers and gurus and influencers and authority figures that are all telling us, you should be living this way, you should be living that way, you should be doing this, you should be achieving that. And right, like, we live in a world where there is so much messaging around what is the right way to be, that the more voices you're listening to, a lot of the time, the more confused you're going to become. This is why I think a lot of people are really attracted to fundamentalist religion, especially right now. Because it sort of helps you to silence the noise a little bit. Right? We are living in a time and a space where we have so much access to so much information and to so many different ways of life that it's unheard of in all of human history to have this much awareness of so many different people groups and so many different people groups' ideas of what is right and wrong. Just think about that. Think about how exposed we are to different ways of life, which can be a very, very positive thing, especially when we grow up in a culture or in a group where the way of life is really antithetical to what's good for us. Like, to be able to be exposed to people who live differently and who see things differently and who have different value systems is very, very beneficial. However, it also is that double-edged sword of we are so overexposed that it can be very, very, very challenging to even try to sort through or figure out who's right and what about each different philosophy of how we should be living is right and what is incorrect and what works and what doesn't, because we are so inundated with so many opinions, right? So there can be a sense of security and safety that we find in fundamentalist stuff or in more extreme cleansing or in the wellness world, or finding a guru and just following all of their teachings, because it simplifies the noise and it helps us to just like, at least I have a thing to focus on, right? At least I have a thing that I'm supposed to become. And even if we're like totally in the secular world, like I'm going to become a lawyer and I'm going to become the most best lawyer and I'm going to dedicate my whole life to that. And just this idea of kind of like finding a thing that we think gives our life direction and purpose and meaning. It can be really attractive in our world where a lot of us don't feel purpose and meaning because we have lost the fact that we used to live in tight-knit communities where everyone had a role in the community and you found your purpose in how you helped the community. And the fact that we're becoming so individualized and separated, and these family units that are tiny, like the little nuclear family versus an actual community and all of this stuff, a lot of us just are lacking this sense of purpose or lacking this sense of motivation or direction because we are lacking connection to each other. And that's part of the dehumanization of our system, is this separation and individualization, this idea that like the more individual you become, the more you're going to find your purpose and your identity and who you are, when in real reality, the more, individualized we become, the more lost we seem to become, because we're not meant to just function as individual beings, right? And the more our spirituality is causing us to become navel-gazing and just constantly focused on ourselves and what's my purpose and who am I and all of this stuff, when it becomes too much of that, we lose the plot. And so then we look for something that's just going to tell us what to do, because of course, what else are we supposed to do? We're lost and we're confused and we feel connected to nothing. And so eventually we get to a place where it's just, if something is very straightforward and fundamentalist, hey, so happy you're here too. it can feel really good and it can feel really clarifying. Yes? So there's that kind of element to it. We live in this world where we are so inundated with individualism, hyper-individualism, so many different ways of this is what the right thing is and this is what the wrong thing is and this is who you should be and this is what you should do and this is what you should be achieving, and all of our messages of like, you need to have a stellar career, you need to be making tons of money, you need to have that nuclear family, 2.5 kids and the spouse, and you have to be like basically cis het with the house and the cars, and you need to be thin and you need to be perfect and able-bodied and beautiful and young forever and happy and all of these things on social media. Or you need to be spiritual to the nth and you need to be transcended and you need to have no negative emotions and you need to be doing your spiritual path perfectly. Or you need to be like fully transcended in your healing journey and never have a zit ever again and all of it, right? We are shown so many different extreme, this is what it looks like to be on track. You have stopped being a human, essentially, and you are a machine, a cog in the wheel, you are a part of the machine, or you have no sense of, just your humanity, being a human. And yeah, so we've been conditioned to look outside ourselves for approval, guidance, and confirmation. And at the same time being conditioned to say that like it's all within you and it's all about you and you need to, find your purpose and find your meaning within yourself. And these two like juxtaposing ideas at the same time. Yeah? So is it any wonder that we all just feel this shame and this guilt that I'm doing it wrong? I must be failing. I must not be living life right. And whenever we feel dissatisfied, whenever we feel that loss of purpose, whenever we feel like we can't maintain being on track for what we should be doing, for most of us, the automatic reaction is self-blame and shame and guilt. Right? We feel like I did something wrong, I failed, I'm not good enough, and that's the reason that I'm not experiencing the life that I want to experience. And the world we live in wants us to feel that way. That's how our economy runs. We sort of have to take a step back and realize that the more insecure we feel, the more we feel like our pain is our fault, the more we can be convinced to live in that shame and that guilt, the less we're going to question the system, the less we're going to question the programming, the less we're going to question why we're even doing what we're doing and if it's truly helpful or not. And the more we're going to blame and shame ourselves and try to force ourselves to get back on track with this way of life that serves to keep our systems of overconsumption and overproduction going at the cost of ourselves, and we don't see it. This is why I truly believe that being able to get past shame and guilt into what's truly happening is the key to figuring out, okay, do I feel shame and guilt in a healthy way, in the sense that I am experiencing negative outcomes, negative consequences of my actions? And that is something I need to learn from. Okay, so a lot of the time when people hear me say that shame and guilt are always lies, what they think I'm saying is you should never feel bad about anything. That is not what I'm saying. Okay? In real reality, if you punch someone in the face, there should be something inside of you that doesn't feel good that you did that. Okay? But shame and guilt says, I am a terrible person. I am fundamentally flawed. I am fundamentally broken. I am fundamentally bad that I did that. The problem is my fundamental nature is fucked up, and I need to course correct by shaming and blaming and guilting myself so that I never do that again. That's what shame and blame does. It says, there is something inherently fundamentally bad and wrong about me, that I made a bad choice. Real reality says, What did it feel like to hit that person in the face? When I tune in with my body and I tune in with my emotions, how did that feel? And the chances are it's not going to feel good. And so we say, okay, why did I do that? What was the intention behind that? Right? I wanted something they had, or I felt attacked by them, or whatever it was. There was a reason I did it. And at its core, the reason I did it is innocent. I was trying to protect myself. I wanted something that they had, whatever it was. It's not that I am fundamentally evil and I just wanted to cause that person pain for no reason. I can guarantee you, okay, and again, caveat, I know that there are people out there, narcissists, abusers, where that's what it looks like is happening. And I'm not speaking to those people because I guarantee you, if you're watching this, you are not one of those people. So this does not apply to people who have like actual mental disorder. And again, I can't explain true narcissism and sociopathy and that kind of thing. We don't know why that happens, right? That's a clear sort of like somewhere in the wiring, something got messed up. And we can think about it, right? Like literally everything on this planet exists, right? Like every kind of variation that our biology can have that can still live exists, essentially. Because we have been evolving for so long, and because there are so many of us, that like you kind of have to expect that every biological variation is going to exist. And so we have these people who have sociopathy and psychopathy, and I think we're going to discover, right, that there is something fundamentally different about the way that their brains are built and the way that they operate that is different from average humanity. And I also think that we're going to find that, you know, just like with like a cancer cell, like anything that is overly aggressive like that is eventually going to destroy itself by destroying its environment. And the concept is sort of like natural selection, right? Like a narcissist, these kinds of, so I don't want to say narcissism, but like sociopathy and psychopathy, that like I think in like nature that would run itself out at some point because it's so destructive that at some point it's going to destroy its own self. You see? So anyways, that's a tangent, and that's not what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about the general population that has the capacity to feel empathy and to feel connection to something else. Okay? Because that lack of empathy, that lack of awareness of our connection to everything around us is a lack of something we absolutely need as part of our guidance system to figure out what is and isn't right for us. So when we don't have that, when we don't have empathy, the more we don't have empathy, the more we're going to have a hard time figuring out what is truly healthy and what is truly beneficial versus what is just selfish in the moment. Because in real reality, in the zoomed out perspective, we cannot destroy things around ourselves and benefit ourselves. So back to that idea of punching someone in the face, we're going to realize that in the long term, punching someone in the face is not a good strategy for getting what we want. It may get us something that we want in the moment, but the more we do that, the more we're going to be isolated, the more we're going to be punished, the more we're going to be... If that's our strategy for getting that innocent need of I wanted that thing or I wanted to defend myself met, the more we're going to run into problems. And when we really tune in with ourselves, we're going to be able to say, okay, like I'm not fundamentally bad, wrong, and evil, but I can see that the outcome that I want is not going to be achieved by continuing to punch people in the face. The outcome that I want is going to be much more efficiently and effectively achieved through learning communication, through learning different ways of being. And again, I'm not even trying to say that sometimes violence isn't necessary, because there are situations where we are not going to talk our way out of it, and to defend ourselves or to get out of violence is necessary when true violence is the only thing that we're being handed. Like, life is complicated. But generally speaking, like I'm saying, we're going to realize that I wasn't violent because I'm inherently flawed. I was violent because I have an immaturity. I was violent because I didn't realize there's another strategy I could use that is better and more empathetic and gets everyone's needs met and is better for all of us at the same time. So again, what I'm saying is, when we do something, or even like this, right? Like, if we eat something that is just, inherently not healthy for our bodies, and we feel shame and guilt about it. I am bad that I ate that thing. That totally obfuscates the reality of what's going on. Because in real reality, sometimes eating something that is not necessarily physically healthy for us, but brings us pleasure in the moment, and it's a thing we needed to help us get through our day or whatever, is the most beneficial thing we can do. And when we take away the shame and we take away the guilt and we allow ourselves to enjoy it, that's all it is. The body can handle it. We're okay. We move on. We had a nice experience and it was fine. Or we can feel the physical consequences of eating that thing, independent of shame and guilt. We make it neutral. It says nothing about who I am as a person. But it gave me a stomach ache. And the stomach ache didn't actually feel very good. And we do that enough times, and we make it not about shame and not about guilt, eventually we might get to a place where we don't even want to eat it anymore. We don't have to use discipline. We don't have to use forcing ourselves. Because just feeling the consequence of that, versus maybe we learn to, soothe ourselves with a snuggle, or soothe ourselves with some other food, or soothe ourselves with whatever else. We realize, okay, well, I was doing that for a reason. I needed comfort. I needed security. I needed safety. So are there other ways that I can get that need met that don't also lead to a stomach ache? And then we start to do those things instead. We replace the old behavior with the new behavior, getting the need met. And that's how we figure out what we actually want and what we actually need, right? So we got rid of the shame and the guilt. We said, what was the positive intention in what I was doing? What are the negative outcomes? How can I get that positive intention without the negative outcome? Find a new behavior. And there was no shame or guilt involved. And that, right there, is the strategy for figuring out if the path that we're on, if the track that we're on is truly something that is good for us, that we just need more discipline and time to become our new normal, or if it's something that we have been conditioned we have to do and conditioned we have to be, that is not in alignment with who and what we are. We start with compassion and curiosity. When we fall off track, we want to pattern interrupt the shame and the guilt. Because like I just explained, shame and guilt are never the full story. We want to look at, why did I fall off track? What was hurting about being on track? What was the thing that took me off track? What was beneficial and helpful and good about the off-track thing that I did? What was the positive intention behind my off-track thing? What are the positive benefits of being on track? What are the negative consequences of being on track? What do I have to give up? What do I miss out on? What hurts about being on track? When we can start to have curiosity around what we're actually feeling and actually experiencing, when we're on track and when we're off track. We can start to have true self-awareness. Was on track really something that felt good? Or was it something that felt good because it made me feel like I was doing the right thing? Or I was fitting in? Or other people were going to approve of me? And if I kept doing this, and if I become the thing, I'm going to be loved by other people? Or was it actually giving me good results in my actual day-to-day lived life? And what were those good results? Again, were those good results in terms of like, I fit into the system? People liked me when I did that. People approved of me. It seemed like it was driving me towards a thing that I think I should be. And then we can question that deeper. And then we can get to a place where we ask ourselves, okay, if I were to be in a situation where no matter what I did, I was guaranteed unconditional love. This is another thing that we work on a lot in the mystery school. So rather than being in shame and guilt, we're moving into compassion for ourselves. I'm doing what I'm doing for a reason. There's innocence behind it. If I'm falling off track because I'm just sort of undeveloped, undisciplined, and I need to learn that over time, the way that that's going to happen is by continually exposing myself to the positive outcomes of my new behaviors or of the behaviors I'm trying to be on track with, and allowing myself to feel those things to the point where it starts to be an association of that positive feeling outcome, the actual outcome of my actions, that is what starts to power and fuel me. Learning how to feel the positive outcome of our actions, while then also being realistic about the downsides of whatever we're doing. Because literally, any path that we're on is going to ask us to give something up. Anything that we say yes to means that we're saying no to something else. And we need to be honest with ourselves if that thing we're saying no to is truly something we are willing to say no to. We need to be honest with ourselves if the good outcomes outweigh the negative outcomes. Because sometimes we are convinced we have to do this and we should do that and this is what a good person is and this is what it really is. But to us, what we have to give up to be on that good, right track is not worth it. Or it's not worth it right now. And sometimes we have to make that okay. Maybe in a few years, we'll be the kind of person who wants to do that. But right now, we're not. Sometimes being on track for a certain thing means giving up a coping mechanism or giving up something that we still need right now to live our lives that we're living. Like, for instance, like we have a job we cannot quit, that this is how, and it stresses us out, and it's hard, and it doesn't pay us enough, and it's not fun. And we're trying to then come home and do an hour of meditation every night. And we find that we can't stick on track of that meditation. And then we're looking and we're saying it's because then I just have to pack my lunch and then I eat my dinner and then I go to bed. And I get no time to just relax and unwind and not feel. And so I keep falling off track because at the end of the day, what I have to give up to be in that meditation is something that I need to continue to live the life that I'm living. So maybe a better strategy would be, okay, yeah, I can tell that this meditation is good for me and it does make me feel better. But maybe I'll do 10 minutes. And then I can still have time to watch TV or unwind or do whatever I need to do. So I can still get the positive benefits of what I need. But also acknowledge my whole humanity. And then maybe over time, the meditation starts to feel so good that you want to do it a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer. But thinking, right, being able to do 10 minutes every day versus an hour for a week and then not again for 6 months. Sometimes we need to be honest with ourselves. Yes? So we're not shaming and blaming ourselves. We're saying, what are the actual outcomes? This is how we connect with reality. What are the actual outcomes? What are my actual intentions? What am I truly getting out of this? And then that is where we can start to say, okay, now, when I fall off track, sometimes that's because the track that I'm on is not right for me. So like with the cleansing example I gave at the beginning. For some of us, we need to be honest and we need to say, okay, the positive results that I'm getting on my extreme juice fast or whatever. Number one, are those positive results really what I think they are? Am I really truly healing, or am I in a state of stress and anxiety and overwhelm and bliss from thinking that I'm doing something? And then am I having to ignore a bunch of negative things that are actually happening, that are showing me that what I'm doing is actually damaging, but that I don't want to admit because I want this to be the answer? Right? Am I watching my hair fall out? Am I watching myself have less energy? Am I laying in bed thinking I'm having a spiritual experience when really I'm just having an adrenaline rush? And when I fall off track, am I really falling off track? Or am I all of a sudden consuming nutrients I wasn't consuming on my fast that my body actually needs? Is the heaviness coming from the come down? Or is it that, that extreme thing that I did forced me to eat a bucket of ice cream because I was starving? And if I had just done something reasonable, I'm not going to do something so extreme. So I might not get feeling like I'm healing my body overnight. But then I can, eat some sweet potato, eat some rice, eat some beans, eat some cooked vegetables at night, have some juice in the morning, this kind of thing. And long term, I'm going to be able to sustain this and get positive outcomes that feel good and not feel like I need to eat the bucket of ice cream. Because I didn't starve myself so bad that I had to swing way the other way. Right? Like that when we're noticing that our routine is wild swings, we need to have compassion for ourselves. That's how we know that what we're doing is too extreme for us. Sometimes our nervous system just is not ready. So again, we might be on something that is truly something we're onto that is actually really good for us, but we're doing it too much. Our body, our nervous systems, we're not ready for an hour of meditation every day. We're not ready for juice every day. It's too much. We can do a little bit though, because we are getting positive results. We want to maintain those results. So how much can I actually do and sustain and maintain without having to white knuckle it? How much can I admit to myself that I'm a human just like everyone else and willpower wears off? So what can I actually do where I experience the benefits? And experiencing those benefits becomes the motivation. And then I'm not having to white knuckle push myself so hard every single day to force myself to do it. And then incrementally over time, I can build up and build up and build up and become the kind of person who can meditate for an hour a day. Or am I wildly swinging because when I'm on track, there are a bunch of negative things that I'm ignoring? Because when I'm on track, I have an adrenaline high of doing what culture tells me I should do or thinking I'm doing the right thing, but the results are telling me otherwise. And when I'm off track, I'm getting a bunch of needs met that being on track don't meet for me. And then blaming and shaming and guilting myself instead of being able to say, well, no, these are things that I need. And I'm going to have to accept that. So how can I build a lifestyle where these are the needs and the wants that I actually have? This is who I am. And I need to build a life around that. Because sometimes, again, we're being told, like, you should be able to socialize in this way. And every time we try to socialize like that, we get overwhelmed, we get overstimulated, and we think, I suck, and I failed, and what's wrong with me? Instead of being able to say, no, I'm just an introvert, or I will never be able to work like that. Accepting ourselves for who and what we actually are, and saying, the on-track way of doing that is just never going to be a thing for me. Accepting ourselves and then saying, so what is beneficial and doable and reasonable for the person that I actually am? A lot of this comes down to when we get past the shame and the guilt, we start looking for results and outcomes of our actions. And we start looking for, who am I actually? What am I actually capable of right now? What am I actually capable of in general? What works for me and what doesn't? Because this, I think, is the thing that our entire culture is missing. That is the main theme of the mystery school. You are not a cog in the wheel. You are an individual. Meaning there are going to be ways that culture tells us are good for us and what we should be doing that will work for you. And there are things within that that are just never going to work for the individual that you are. And when we can get past the shame and the guilt, we can stop going to all the self-help seminars and stop trying to figure out what's wrong with us, that we can't do this or that we can't stay on track and we can't blah, blah, blah. And we can start to say, okay, no. What are the things that actually give me good results? What are the things in what I'm being told I have to do that are painful and that hurt? And it's not that I can't keep up with it because I suck. It's when I get honest with myself, it doesn't feel good. And it doesn't feel good because it is wrong. Where can we start to say, it's not necessarily wrong that other people are doing these things, but it's wrong for me. I'm never going to be that kind of person. So how do I figure out what kind of person I am? Just my fundamental nature and what supports that. So I used to think that discipline is all it is, always better than any other thing. No, exactly. We can use discipline and white knuckle to force ourselves to do something that is killing us. Right? There is such thing as too much discipline. There is such thing as discipline in the wrong direction. We really want to be aware of, like, why are we being disciplined? Why are we telling ourselves, I need to do this thing? What do we think the outcome is going to be? And is that actually true? Do we get those results? And what are the negative results that come with that? What are we giving up? Is that actually healthy? Again, is it good to do an hour of meditation every night? If it means that your nervous system is so jacked up from your workday, and then you come home and you have no space to unwind because then you're doing this meditation and you feel like you should be doing this meditation, and it's just like, I gotta be disciplined and I gotta be spiritual and this is gonna change my life, and then I gotta pack up my lunch and then I gotta go to bed and I feel totally drained and unfulfilled, then no, that's not a good thing. If your meditation isn't nourishing you and then also giving you time to do what you need to do to unwind from the reality of your day, It's not healthy. You see? So can we use our discipline to do it for 10 minutes to get the benefits? Yes. And then can we have compassion and curiosity for ourselves of like the reality that I work a job I don't like and I can't change that right now and it's stressful and I need an outlet at the end of the day. And if I don't get that, eventually it's just going to drive me to numbing out harder later. You see what I'm saying? Am I over cleansing and not enough integrity? What are the negative results? So this, again, is all about learning how to look for actual results. So how can you set goals taking into consideration your humanity without feeling like we can do better? That's the thing. No shame and guilt. It's not about doing better. What do you want? What are the outcomes that you want, right? If we really take the shame and the blame and the guilt out of it, that's why I say there's a whole curriculum in the mystery school about this. Because most of us don't recognize where the shame and the guilt are driving the bus, and the shoulds and the hypotheticals. And we're then disconnected from real reality. Without feeling like we can do better. Do better in what way? For what reason? What do you get out of that? Is there an actual reason to do better? Is there an actual outcome that you get? Or is it hypothetical? Come to reality. It's not about, should I do better? It's okay, if I did an extra 5 minutes of this, is that an extra 5 minutes of benefit? Or is there a negative backlash that comes with that? That's not worth it? Do I need to just be okay with the 10 minutes that I have right now until 5 more minutes actually feels better? If I do it for an extra 5 minutes, I can notice that it does feel better. Okay, so then can I support myself in getting through the hard part of making that my new normal? Can I say, okay, I'm just going to do an extra 5 minutes for 5 days or 10 days and see how it feels? And if at the end of 10 days it wasn't worth it, or it keeps slingshotting me back into my coping mechanisms, then the 5 minutes is too much. Do you see what I'm saying? Outcome. We have to start looking at outcome. What is actually happening in real reality? Not what do we think we should. Is there a benefit in doing more? And if there is a benefit in doing more, eventually that will become the motivation. And if there isn't, or if there's some negative consequence, so there might be a benefit, but then there's a negative consequence that's even more, we want to get curious about that. Do you see what I'm saying? You see how insidious this is? Like, you see how we can just not see it. I should do better. It's like any time we're thinking should or shouldn't, that is clicking us in. We're disconnected from reality. Why not? What do I think is going to happen? What actually happens in real reality? What do I actually want? Does this thing give it to me? Compassion and curiosity. I'm doing everything I'm doing for a good reason. So what is the reality of my life? What is the reality of my personality? It's complex. Do you see how it's complex? Right? It's not straightforward. We want to keep looking at actual outcome and getting more and more curious about that and how everything fits together. I see 100%. I used to feel guilty for sleeping until I realized my goals were more easily achieved without me necessarily being in a rush. Exactly. Because that's our culture, right? Our culture says you have to do everything right now. You have to do it right now, you have to do it as fast as possible, and you have to do it as much as possible. And then we all wonder why we burn out and quit. Because it's not sustainable. We are not trained how to have a sustainable life in our culture. And that's a huge problem with our culture. Most of us have reasonable goals and things that we want and things that would be good for us. But the way we're being told how to do it is as fast and as much as possible right now. And we have no patience and no capacity to do a little bit every day instead of trying to do all of it today. So that's how we honor our humanity. We say, okay, I am a finite being with finite capacity. What am I actually capable of over time? And can I allow that to be enough? And can I allow myself to witness what are the results that I get from that when I just commit to it over time? And that's the big thing. Commit to it over time and look at the results. Change things as you go. Change things as you go. Allow yourself to become stronger over time. Do what you can do today. Observe the outcomes. Get honest with yourself about the outcomes, positive and negative. Build on what is working. Deconstruct what hurts. That's putting this in a nutshell. Do what you can do today. Observe the results. Build on what is working. Deconstruct what is not working. Have compassion for yourself. Do that over and over and over and over again. Because the deconstruct what is not working is so important. And we miss it when we think, I'm on the right track. This is the right thing. I just have to do it more. Okay? Does that make sense? Any questions, comments, concerns before we close it out? Honoring your humanity means honoring your feelings and your experience and the actual outcomes instead of just what we hypothetically think it should be. I struggle with the compassion part. Yeah, we all do. Right? That's why I made the school. Because it's hard. It's really hard to have compassion for ourselves. But hopefully these videos and everything that I put out, we remind you every single week. Compassion, compassion, compassion. Everything you're doing for a good reason. And the more you have compassion, the more you'll discover where I can push myself a little harder and where I can do a little more and where I just need to give myself a break and why I'm doing what I'm doing. We can't have true self-awareness without compassion. I truly believe that. So if all we do is practice the compassion part, everything else will fall into place. Practice the compassion part. Everything else will start to make sense after that. Before the compassion part, nothing will make sense. It will all be self-improvement. Okay? Okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. Thank you. I'll see you next week. Okay? Love to you all. Bye.